Washington reveals what's behind some diplomats' mysterious diseases. It might have to do with a kind of radio frequency weapon. Tragedy at a local mine in China. 23 people died. This is the region's second such incident in 2 months. A young Chinese girl drowned while police officers stood by and watched. Netizens question what situations authorities would get involved with, if not to save a citizen from drowning. And following U.S. sanctions, a leading global stock index cut off cash flow from investors to Chinese companies. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A U.S. government commission report says directed radio frequency energy attacks very likely occurred in Cuba and China. Victims were U.S. diplomats in the countries.
A long-awaited U.S. government report released over the weekend said the most plausible explanation for the mysterious symptoms experienced by American diplomats in U.S. embassies in Havana, Cuba, and other countries were, quote, consistent with a directed radio frequency energy attack. That's according to a government-commissioned report by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine released on Saturday, which marks the first time Washington has officially offered an explanation for what's come to be known as Havana syndrome, though it's still inconclusive.
We continue to try and determine precisely the causation of this.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in October that significant U.S. government resources had been dedicated to solving the mystery, in which more than 40 U.S. government employees were affected between 2016 and into 2018. Diplomats in some postings in Cuba and other countries were plagued with nausea, headaches, dizziness, and other unexplained symptoms. Havana syndrome has long been the subject of intense speculation, given the nature of the symptoms, the location of the postings, and the silence of the U.S. government. The State Department said in June 2018 that it brought home diplomats who were stationed in China over concern they were suffering similar symptoms.
Do Chinese police really serve the people? This is put into question as a viral video shows officers basically watch a girl drown.
A 17-year-old attempted suicide by drowning herself. A number of Chinese police were at the scene, but they did not proactively try to save her. This happened last Friday in eastern China's Anhui province. When the young woman first began to drown, officers appeared reluctant to dive in and get their uniforms wet. They showed no sense of urgency. One officer finally entered the water after the girl had sunk below the surface. One Twitter user criticized the police response, calling the officers slow as 80-year-olds, but pointed out authorities take much quicker action when it comes to inflicting physical punishment. Another netizen said that if the British diplomat was there, she would have been saved, referring to a recent incident where Stephen Ellison, the consul general in Chongqing, jumped in a lake to save a drowning woman. Ellison was walking by the river when he heard commotion from bystanders and came to the rescue. This isn't the first time Chinese police have taken their time to respond to a life-or-death emergency. In China's Jiangxi province, 3 school children drowned in 2012. That's after Chinese police refused to save them. The officers had demanded money from the children's relatives before they are to save them. Their family members agreed to pay once the kids were safe, but the police would not accept their offer, leaving the children to die. In another case, police in Shanghai even arrested bystanders who tried to save a drowning college student in 2014. According to an eyewitness, police stood by and watched the student drown after arriving at the scene. Authorities then set up a perimeter along the lake, preventing others from saving him and arresting anyone who tried. When asked why they refused to take action, they simply responded, not all of them could swim.
Now we look to a coal mine accident in China's southwestern city of Chongqing. 23 people died as they were trapped in the mine. This is the region's second such accident in just over 2 months.
The dead were among 24 people trapped underground by excessive levels of carbon monoxide gas at the Daoshuidong coal mine. Rescuers saved the lone survivor after more than 30 hours. This according to Chinese state-run Xinhua news agency. The accident occurred on Friday afternoon about 5 p.m. as the company dismantled underground equipment. The mine had been shut for more than 2 months. The reason for the carbon monoxide gas leak is still unknown. The coal mine was built in 1975 and ran since 1998 as a private enterprise. It's a high-gas mine with annual capacity of 130,000 tons of coal. China's mines are among the world's deadliest. In 2013, 3 people were killed and 2 injured in a hydrogen sulfide poisoning incident at the mine. In another coal mine in the same city just 2 months ago, 16 deaths were reported after high levels of carbon monoxide trapped miners. Reporting by Grace Wong, NTD News.
U.S. sanctions affect more than Communist Party officials. Volkswagen AG, the biggest foreign car maker in China, might stop its operations. But the move would only affect plants in China.
Volkswagen, China's biggest foreign automaker, might stop part of its operations in the country. That's amid U.S. sanctions that restrict the flow of microchips to China. Volkswagen runs 3 joint ventures in China. One of them halted operations earlier this month. The second will soon follow suit. Combined, those 2 ventures can produce more than 200,000 cars a month. Just like in smartphones and other technology, chips act as the brain of the car. They're responsible for monitoring the car's sensors every time the engine starts. The White House is blocking Chinese companies from using American-made chips, including chips made using American technology. The imposed sanctions specially target companies with military and political ties to the Chinese Communist Party. The German car maker launched its first joint venture in China in 1984. It delivered more than 4 million cars to Chinese customers last year. Reporting by Becky Zhou, NTD News.
A former pro-democracy Hong Kong legislator announced his exile in the UK. He says he will continue the fight for Hong Kong's freedom from the CCP from overseas. Days later, his bank accounts in Hong Kong are suddenly frozen without any clear reasons why.
An ex-lawmaker from Hong Kong says his bank accounts there were suddenly frozen after he left to seek exile in Britain with his family. Ted Hui, a former pro-democracy lawmaker, last Thursday announced through Facebook leaving the country with his family. Hui said that his decision was hasty following Hong Kong's pro-Beijing government's recent sentencing of democracy activists and media tycoon Jimmy Lai. The 38-year-old was in Denmark for a climate change conference on November 30th. Hong Kong media reported his family left Hong Kong to join him in Denmark on December 2nd. He said his local bank accounts appeared frozen soon after. Local media reported that at least 5 accounts worth hundreds of thousands of US dollars became inaccessible since Saturday. Hui told Reuters that the bank accounts belong to him, his wife, and his parents, and 3 banks are involved: Hong Kong branch of Bank of China, the UK-headquartered bank HSBC, and Hong Kong-based Hang Seng Bank. Hong Kong South China Morning Post reported Hui had contacted the bank since, and the staff only told him there were remarks placed on his accounts. Hong Kong police said late on Sunday that they were investigating a Hong Kong person for suspected money laundering and possible violation of the new national security law. The police said this person had absconded overseas and bank accounts were frozen, but it was not immediately clear who the police were referring to. Hui said on Thursday he had fled from Hong Kong after facing criminal charges. A pro-democracy member of the Hong Kong Legislative Council since 2016, Hui resigned in November alongside other pan-democratic camp lawmakers. The move in protest of the government's decision to disqualify 4 pro-democracy legislators from the council. Reporting by Xu Wenhui, NTD News.
The United States on Monday imposed financial sanctions and a travel ban on 14 Chinese officials for their role in disqualifying the elected opposition legislators in Hong Kong. British index FTSE will soon delist several Chinese firms. That's after the U.S. strengthened its blacklist of Chinese companies. NTD's Patrick Hayden has more.
The FTSE stock market index in London will delete shares of 8 Chinese companies. They're part of a U.S. blacklist of companies allegedly backed by the Chinese military. Last month, a White House executive order barred U.S. investors from buying securities of those blacklisted firms starting in November 2021. FTSE said it acted on feedback from index subscribers and other stakeholders and was following its policy when sanctions are imposed that restrict investments. The delistings will take effect December 21st. The FTSE's China-based exchanges will only have these Chinese companies under review for the moment. The Pentagon last week also blacklisted chipmaker SMIC and oil giant CNOOC. A FTSE spokesperson said they will review those companies in due course. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
The Trump administration has ended 5 cultural exchange programs with China. The government says the programs were used to push Chinese communist propaganda and held no benefit to the United States. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the exchange programs he ended were fully paid for and operated by the Chinese regime. He says they were actually soft power propaganda tools. The terminated programs include the Policymakers Educational China Trip Program, the U.S.-China Friendship Program, the U.S.-China Leadership Exchange Program, the U.S.-China Trans-Pacific Exchange Program, and the Hong Kong Educational and Cultural Program. Each program allowed U.S. officials to travel in China at Beijing's expense. Pompeo says mutually beneficial exchange programs will continue. The U.S. is joining new military drills in Japan. That's according to a local newspaper there that says the drills will aim to counter China's growing military presence in Asia. The exercises will take place on one of Japan's uninhabited outlying islands in May. The Shanghai newspaper says the focus will be on relief during natural disasters, but could also form the basis for defense. The Chinese regime currently claims Japanese-controlled islands in the East China Sea as its own and has increased Chinese naval activity in the area. France will also join the drills. The chief of staff of the French Navy told Shanghai that the effort will send the Chinese regime a message about multilateral partnership and the freedom of passage. Now we look to a new move from Europe. The European Union and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, known as ASEAN, have agreed to upgrade their relationship. Now, it's classified as a strategic partnership. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas says the EU country will stand up for the safe trade routes and free and fair trade. His comments came after a virtual meeting between the two blocs. Germany currently holds the EU's rotating presidency. The ASEAN Association consists of 10 countries in Southeast Asia. It doesn't include China. Experts have called the move a sign that EU countries are working to reduce their dependency on China. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.